Okay, folks, it is 7:03. I will call this meeting to the Zoning and Economic Development Committee of ANC 1E to order. I'm Michael Ray, filling in as the chair. I'm joined this evening by our chairman, Brian Footer, and committee member, Tony Norman. And I just see, and Wendell's joined. Anyway, so there are only three of us from the committee on here tonight. So this should be a great discussion amongst us. We have three items that will be on the agenda. One is a draft resolution regarding vacant properties in ANC 1A, and then a draft resolution on expansion of the Main Streets area along the Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street program. And then finally, it will just be an update and a discussion on a BZA case that has been ongoing regarding Howard University and the site of the former car rental location that they want to use as a temporary catering location that is going to be postponed. And so we've met on that one before, but I just want to make sure that the committee was aware of where that sat. I do see that Wendell Felder has joined us, and I'll bring him up at the appropriate time, and he can give us any updates on that as well. But does anyone have any other issues or topics that need to be added to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, I will assume that we'll consent to that agenda and move forward from that. I will remind folks, if we have anyone calling in, *9 will raise your hand, *6 will unmute. We did notice this meeting in the public through our website, through our email listservs, and through our social media. Please join our website, please go to our website in order to sign up for our email list if you are not already on there. That is how we notice all of our public meetings. Thank you. All right, so the first one is on vacant properties, and Chairman Footer is going to lead us on that one. Do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. All right.
Unknown caller.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. We are looking at the vacant and blighted property. Okay, so this resolution came to us through ANC 1A. It is quite lengthy, so I'm just going to talk through some of the highlights, but definitely recommend people take a moment and take a look at it. I will say before I go into some of the nuances, the intended purpose of this resolution and some of the background, ANC 1A has an economic development committee that has been spending a lot of time on trying to organize around identifying why some of these vacant and blighted properties are a consistent issue, and the issue has been raised by a number of different businesses throughout ANC 1A, particularly in Columbia Heights. And with that, they've done a deep dive into some of the regulations and the laws. And this resolution is really intended to be a conversation starter. What I mean by that is that you'll see at the end that they're calling on the council to start a working group and really to try and do an art of the possible. What could we do in order to improve upon the process and incentivize property owners to either develop or sell their properties that may be vacant and blighted. And so I think that this is a phenomenal idea, and the Commissioner Jeremy Sherman, who put this together, did a phenomenal job in doing a bunch of research. I sat down with him over the weekend just to get a little bit more nuance in what he was trying to accomplish with this. And so I'll go through some of the pieces of it. In these first kind of pieces, essentially what we're saying is, breaking down how it impacts Ward 1, particularly 1E, that we have the greatest number of vacant and blighted properties with 145 out of the over 500 in the ward. That there are a significant number that are actually have been vacant for 4 or more years. Continuing to go down, they are making the case around, or we're making the case around why this is a problem. It deals with criminal activity, low property values. An interesting thing is that the disproportionate effect on businesses in the community. Then going through some of the history of ways that they have tried to actually deal with this. And essentially this is the meat, right? So the stuff at the top was really going through some of the background. Here's where the meat really starts, where it's talking about the issue as it pertains to the two classifications, which is the class 3 a class 3 property tax rate for vacant properties. The class 3 relates to vacant properties, and then class 4 for blighted properties. And essentially the case they're making is around that for class 3, it's $5 per $100 of the assessed value, and for class 4, they're taxed at $10 per $10 per 100 of the assessed value. That hasn't stayed up with the rate of inflation. And so therefore, and that the two primary agencies that are really involved in tracking, monitoring, assessing, and collecting a lot of these penalties are the Department of Buildings and the Office of Tax Revenue, and they've not done a really good job of coordinating amongst themselves. I'm going to stop there before I get to the resolutions, because that is a mouthful, and I want to just stop and see if there are any questions before getting into the let it be resolved kind of pieces of it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Tony, did you have any questions?
Not now, no.
No problem. Commissioner Footer, the one that I have seen kind of pop up amongst our colleagues is this point on keeping up with inflation. I would certainly make the case that property values keep track with inflation, more so in fact than inflation. And so in a way that is being done. And so maybe that particular one is not something we want to harp on. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah, I agree. I was a little confused by this because $5 per 100 is essentially 5%. And then $10 is essentially 10%. And so I wasn't sure, and I have an outstanding question to ANC 1A to get a clarity on that. But I agree. I wasn't sure exactly what that is and why that is the particular issue, because it does seem to be something that could stay at the rate of inflation. So I'll get clarity on that, and we can potentially amend it before the end of the month.
That's all I had.
Awesome. The other
You're
pieces
expecting,
that
you're planning on tonight a vote?
I would love to, and we can, maybe just highlight within the motion for this to be voted on that, there's an outstanding piece that needs to be updated, or maybe we need to take this out. But yeah, I would love for the resolution to be voted on tonight.
Okay.
The other piece that I highlighted just to draw some attention to it is in the version that 1A passed, they were calling for the creation of a district-wide ANC task force on vacant and blighted buildings. When they passed it, I think the next day, Chairman Mendelson had announced, in a not very public way because I can't find any formal announcement about it, but he had announced that he's creating a new vacant and blighted property working group. And so in trying to leverage what the city council may be already doing and not trying to duplicate effort, I just amended that section to read that, we call, or just acknowledging that Chairman Mendelson has announced that he's going to put this together, but didn't announce who the members are or what the timeline is. And so in the let it be resolved section, I started to say that, that we call on Chairman Mendelson to include at least one ANC representative from every ward in the newly announced vacant and blighted property. Further, the working group recommend legislative and regulatory reforms, and so forth. And I didn't get to edit that yet. So I'll go through the remaining pieces of the let it be resolved piece. So asking the council to pass legislation reforming the way DOB classifies the vacant and blighted properties. That with that, we're calling on the creation of a commercial area, residential area classifications to be added to each of the class statuses. Recommending that a mixed use, neighborhood mixed use, and you know what, I'm gonna actually just let people read it for a moment.
While people are reading, I'll just note for the record that we are now joined by committee member Patrick Nelson as well.
Hey, Patrick. The other thing that's just highlighted here is I had reached out to the Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street. Unfortunately, the former director, Kay Pearson, is no longer with them, so I did not have an opportunity to reach out to whoever the new contact is. But my question is, I think this is great. I just want to see if we want to expand this a bit. Essentially, there in 1A's proposal, they were saying that there should be a process to give preference to abutting and nearby businesses who are interested in buying a vacant property when the property is up for tax sale. I don't disagree with that. I just wanted to know if that's something that is applicable to 1E, and if there are other classifications that we think we might want to advocate for having a priority. A small business, a first-time business owner, a formerly incarcerated business owner, whatever that case may be that we want to do for 1A. I'm sorry, 1B or E. We may want to add here or tweak. But that's one of the questions that I wanted to bring to this committee and get some of the feedback from the committee members on what they think might be a good representation or priorities for 1E.
Brian, when you say abutting neighbors, you're talking about abutting owners of buildings?
Abutting and nearby businesses. Mm-hmm.
I would say one
Business is
thing
not owned by,
that's where I was. That's exactly where I was going to go, Patrick.
yeah,
Yeah, sometimes the businesses don't own the buildings, so there might be something to. I mean, we could write this around the idea that you're looking, that the council should consider preferences based on surrounding business owners, surrounding property owners, surrounding surrounding homeowners. That's up to the council then to figure out legislatively, are they able to do that? We're not writing the legislation, we're simply giving them an idea.
I would be more, and as Michael said, we can't make the legislation here, but I would be more in favor of wording this in a way that says businesses that are abutting that, I don't know how to say this in a way that makes sense, that gives them the opportunity to become owners. Because sometimes businesses lease from somebody who owns, but they'd like to be owners themselves, but they can't because of the property stuff. So this gives them an option to not only be a business, but be owners too. And if it's worded in a way to say that you're offering it to businesses that potentially could become owners.
I love that. And I know this is not the right language, but I hear exactly what you're saying. It's the transition of like a business who may be leasing property. They're interested in owning a property, and so they should be part of like a priority or something along those lines.
Yeah. And
I love that.
I say that from personal experience in dealing with tenants that are businesses that are having issues with their current landlord, like one in particular, that leave because they can't afford to find space to move to, and when they try to find space that they can own, it's out of their realm. So this is an opportunity to foster businesses and ownership of property.
I see that we have a hand from the public would like to go to that, but just want to make sure, does any other committee members have a comment so far before we do that? All right, then I'm going to go.
Michael,
Okay.
just let me ask one quick question. That kind of doesn't really pertain specifically to this resolution, but Brian, what, and I know Phil has talked ad nauseum about the whole issue relating to vacant and blighted buildings, but is it in the tax code that says that if your building is vacant or blighted, that you just have to pay a little bit of tax to be able to keep in the loop? Or is there a way that legislation can be changed within the tax code that says if you don't pay the full amount, you forfeit your building immediately, type thing? Because that's where we get into the issue of so many properties sitting empty because they pay a little bit, and then the city can't legally take the property because they have paid some of their tax, but then it'll go for years and years and years and years. And then when they finally do decide to do it, the city forgives the past due tax and they lose all the revenue, which is absurd in my mind.
Yeah.
I'll add to that this would be a place where that having that additional commercial property, but I guess there already is a designation for commercial properties, but I could see the council being a little more interested in that on a commercial property than, let's say, residential. So I would clearly make that distinction, but I agree with Patrick. That's a good way of looking at it. All right, I am going to go to Teresa, to the public. And if there are other members of the public that want to comment, feel free to raise your hand. Teresa, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thanks. Hi, thank you. Hi, gentlemen, commissioners, members of the public. I just wanted to say that you were talking about this neighbors, community members being able to buy, first preference buildings and businesses. I just hired a Vista, AmeriCorps Vista from Howard to work with District Bridges on the Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we would, could get some support on for sure. This is the kind of thing I'm thinking of for this particular Vista, these kinds of things. So I just wanted to let you know that yeah, you got some support coming on things like this. Okay.
Well, we know you know a lot about this as the former Main Streets director for the and now with Howard University. So we welcome working with you on all of this. It's really about ideas and then trying to get Phil and the council to
exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. Thank you.
To that point, actually, Teresa, before you go, do you have anything to add with respect to this piece right here? Right here. So essentially, I love how Patrick was just saying the preferences based on surrounding businesses that are leasing property, that are interested in owning property. Anything else that you think should be kind of part of a priority or preference based on what your working knowledge of like 1E? And again, Michael mentioned we could be a bit vague, and I like how he was wording it, but if there's anything else that you think might be really good to kind of call out, I would love to include it.
I'd have to give it some thought. Right now, all I can think about is, preference to history, maybe, how long a business or a homeowner has been in the community. But I'd have to think about it a little bit more. But I really do like the idea. It makes sense. Keep people in the community.
Mhm.
Uh,
And
We could
there's-
add language, some language could be added, bring the property back in working order. That could be a little more descriptive,
Mhm.
of course. But flesh that out. Right now, though, I have to think about it. But it looks good to me.
All right. Well, thank you, Teresa. I'm sure we'll talk again in the.
You bet. Thanks for having me. We'll talk
Sure.
later.
And for the record, Dimitri McDaniel has now joined the committee as well. And-
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Dimitri.
Hello.
And we are discussing vacant and blighted properties and the draft resolution that I transmitted around earlier yesterday. Commissioner Footer, anything else you need on this right now?
No, I think that is kind of everything. So with that, if people are comfortable, I would propose a motion, or I move for the committee to support the resolution and ask for kind of it to be open for any particular edits to the things that are highlighted in yellow, without changing the intent of the whereas or the clause, but more to add specificity or expansion.
Was that a motion, Mr.?
That was a motion for the
Then
committee to approve it
I will
with the
second that.
caveat.
I will second that that motion and ask, is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And no abstentions because everyone voted. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5, 0 to 0. Thank you all very much. All right, moving along. The next topic is a draft resolution regarding the expansion of the Main Streets program. And Commissioner Footer also helped pull this together. Do you want to introduce it?
Sure. So in March, Councilmember Nadeau sent a letter to the Department of Small and Local Business Development, DSLBD, asking to expand the boundary lines for the Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street. It would also impact the Shaw Main Street and the U Street Main Street, but the boundary lines essentially that impact Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street would be to expand it east to west from Warder Street to Sherman, and it would expand the southern boundary from Berry down to U Street. I did include this is the graphic that the council member included in her letter to the department. It really just focuses on the southern boundary impact. And I included, and I'll get this in a minute, but the ward drawing and the impact to Shaw Main Street, which we can talk about in just a second. And that effectively the majority of the changes to the Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street are within the ANC 1E, and that there's definitely evidence to support that Main Street programs are very beneficial to small businesses, and we're very interested in being more inclusive and making sure that small businesses have the opportunity to be eligible for different supports and grant opportunities. And so, Shaw Main Street responded with a letter of opposition in April, just a couple of days thereafter, and they raised a number of concerns around the proposed southern boundary changes that would effectively reduce their service area and affect their programming, and their thoughts around a future potential business improvement district. So we are proposing that we are in supportive of the expansion of the revised Main Street boundary lines for the Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street, and that we don't believe that there will be any real impact on future conversations around a potential bid, and that we would like for DSLBD to implement this given their authority granted by the mayor, rather than having the DC Council legislate the boundary lines. Yes.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Dimitri.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what was the concern from Shaw Main Street? Just that you'd be divvying it up with the U Street Main Street and whatever business improvement district exists for that entity? Is that sort of the concern?
So Michael, please help me make sure that I don't miss anything in this. They wrote a 2-page letter, and I will absolutely share it so people can read it on their own. The key takeaways that I had kind of taken from it, and I'm summarizing this in my own words, is that effectively taking out this chunk of their border, their northern border, which is our southern border, would have impact to their ability to provide services that they had been providing services to this area. Their services are, these are my words, are planning on the upcoming economic development in this area, i.e. Bonreco, all these other things that will have commercial real estate. It will impact their kind of functionality. Additionally, they are saying, and they didn't go into a lot of detail of why, but from their perspective, that it would impact their desire to start up conversations for how to create a bid in this general vicinity. I would say those are the two major takeaways that I kind of took away, but Michael, or Commissioner Ray, anything that you want to add? Make sure I didn't miss anything.
No, I mean, I think to boil the point down, it's that it would be a smaller geographic area, which, you know, no one likes to have their parts taken away. And that it would somehow impact a future bid, which I don't necessarily understand, because you can still talk to those businesses and consider a future bid, even if they're part of different main streets. There's nothing that would prohibit that. So, but those were, I think, the two key takeaways. And I would point out again, that area that you're talking about right now is serviced by the U Street corridor main streets, the Lower Georgia Avenue corridor main streets, and then the Shaw main streets. And so what we're trying to, or the council member is trying to do, is clarify where those boundary lines ought to be, given where the other political boundary lines are and who supports them.
So this would become Lower Georgia Avenue, or would this become
the section? Part of it would become Lower Georgia Avenue, part of it would become U Street, and then the remainder would remain as the Shaw northern boundary.
Got it. Okay, that's still a little confusing to me, but
correct. And I would point out, because what's not here is that we're expanding the Georgia Avenue main street to include Water Street to the east and Sherman Avenue to the west, which includes a number of small businesses, corner stores and markets and other places that are not currently covered by the main street and therefore are not eligible for the grant opportunities.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah.
So Dimitri, I will give you just a little bit of history. I won't go on and on because
Please do.
you know I can talk till I'm blue in the face, but this is something that as much as I'm not a supporter of Brianne, I am really happy that she has taken leadership in doing this. We have been lobbying for this for a long time. When the original Shaw Main Street was formed, his boundary ended at Florida Avenue. There was a group that had been working on, it was 1A and 1B at that point in time, that was working on trying to get a new Georgia Avenue Main Street up and running. So when it was sent, and this goes back to like 2000, when it was put in place, the ANC worked on it. There was a group of us community members that was working on it. We had put in a bid, and District Bridges also put in a bid. And in the interim time, because of I'll use the word hanky-panky that was going on. There was also some work being done at the university level to remove some of the campus, because the campus was much bigger back then, the actual footprint of the campus. And a group of us were lobbying the university to try and get rid of the parcels that are not being used and put them out for redevelopment. So in the interim time of when we were working on this, Alex came up with this great idea that he wanted to use all of that future development within his Main Street. So he went down and had a conversation with Christy Whitfield, who is the director, unbeknownst to those of us who had been working on this, and she gave him that extra land. So when we tried to work with the city and we got the two potential bidders to come up with the boundaries, she didn't want to budge on that. She said, no, I've already given that land to Shaw. But really the Shaw Main Street was to end originally based on the boundaries at Florida Avenue. So what she's doing, Brianne is doing now, based on some lobbying that has happened over the years, is trying to push the boundaries back to where they should have been in the first place. And his argument is that he's going to lose all of this stuff. Well, he should never have had it in the first place, because we were planning on having all of that land in the Georgia Avenue Main Street so that we could use it for the exact same purposes that he's claiming he's going to lose it for. So that's the short story.
And I worked on that and I support that, what Brianna and all of them are working on, but I agree with Patrick and the rest of them. And I worked on these, the issues of that and with Padre and all that. So I'm strongly in favor of that.
And if I can just add one more piece, the proposals and the design plans that we've heard from the developers of Lot 3, the towers, Bonreco, they're doing a really exciting, interesting way of trying to connect these properties to Georgia Avenue. And so it makes sense now, while these developments are going to be coming online, that we kind of start to bring in all these different parties and start to consolidate it so that there is uniformity in what the structural kind of plans are. And so I think not only is it in our best interest, but it makes sense just efficiency wise for who's going to be part of what areas and all of that.
Great. I'm very happy to hear that it sounds like there's some consensus around this one. I wasn't sure where everyone was going to be. So
Same.
very happy to hear that. Commissioner or Chairman, the word implement there in your second to last. Thank you. And then it sounds like we're ready for a motion unless there's another question, or the public, does anyone in the public can raise their hand? I'm not seeing one.
So with that, Commissioner Ray, I propose that the committee support resolution in support of the proposed boundary lines for Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street by unanimous consent.
Does anyone have any dissent? Seeing none, that will be a 5-0 to 0. Thank you all very much. Moving right along.
Brian, can you tell me where you're going to send this to? Where you going to transmit the resolution to?
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions on what to include, by all means, please. So Director Whitfield, Councilmember Nadeau, Pinto, McDuffie, and then Interim Deputy Mayor Keith Anderson. Anyone else that you think we should add?
I would suggest that you do it, send it to all of the at-large members, not just Kenyon. And I also say this to Brian, although I know this might be a sore point for you, but I think you need to have a conversation with powers that be over at Howard and see whether they would, I mean, I've had some discussion with them, so I won't speak on their behalf, they could speak for themselves, but I think that it might be helpful if you have them send some kind of letter supporting this resolution or the idea of what its content is, since they are a large landowner along this proposed change. And I think that's important to have that weight behind it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I love Howard University. I would be honored to reach out to them. And we have 2 members of Howard University that are joining us tonight.
And since we, I know we already passed it, but we'll go ahead and Teresa, you can unmute yourself.
Sure, just that's, going to come from SVP Young. That's certainly that conversation has been had, when we first got wind of this, and, we did our work, and, did we want a position? What position would we take? And so, it's not something that we haven't spoken about, but that will have to come directly from SVP Young's decision making.
Okay, very good. Give me a minute and we'll be back to you here in a second. Okay.
I also believe, just as a additional footnote here, that I'm not sure whether they actually took a vote, but this was discussed at the 1B Economic Development Committee, where somebody from DSLBD came and explained what was going on with main streets and how they work and all that kind of stuff. And Alex came and gave his little dog and pony show about why he thought that we shouldn't do it. So 1B was informed of this. I don't know whether they actually took a stance. They were supposed to be doing that, but you might want to check with 1B, Brian, and make sure that they weigh in on this too, because they're a holder of a part of this request.
Great idea. Will do.
All right, moving on to our third and final topic of the night. This is just an update on one of the BZA cases that we've heard before. If you may recall, Howard University has a BZA case for the old Enterprise Rent-A-Car location to use that spot as a temporary catering location while they're working on the building, which currently holds their catering location. So, and we did get an update some time ago, and I think we'll hear again from Wendell and Teresa if there are any additional updates. The case before the BZA was is being asked to be postponed again. The purpose of which is to continue negotiations with DDOT on how to access the site. And the reason I want to make sure that the committee is just fully aware of what's going on is that I know that 1B had several meetings on this issue and had come up with a list of its sort of requirements or how it thought the community needed to see this happen. And DDOT has different thoughts. And I do want to make sure that as this moves forward, that the community is sort of involved in these continued negotiations, because once DDOT and HU come to an agreement, I imagine that is going to be what happens, regardless of whether or not, those original community concerns were addressed. So especially with Patrick and Tony, who have done this before and been down this road, if there were any particular issues on the site that you all felt we should be making sure are addressed. Commissioner Footer, you were originally given the green light on this project. Is there anything you would add to what I just said?
Nope, I think that's right.
Okay.
Or that's everything, excuse me.
Good. If Patrick and Tony and others, if you want to hold any comment until we get an update from Teresa and Wendell, I'm happy to do that, or if you have any initial thoughts.
No, I want to hear what they have to say, because I've already had some conversations with them.
Okay, and I figured that maybe some of this has been going on behind the scenes, but I just wanted to make sure. All right, I'm going to bring Teresa and Wendell forward. I see Teresa. Hello. Good. Hello again. You're still muted though. There you go.
Hi.
Teresa, did anything I say not ring true to you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
You know, this thing has had a lot of iterations. And so the update, where we stand right now is that, you know, DDOT, we've been going back and forth with them you know, had Grove Slade had to do some, you know, transportation studies, the trucks and the alley, and it just really, really got bogged down. DDOT kept punting it back to us and saying, you know, do this, do that. You were so diplomatic, Michael, when you said, you described DDOT. I said, wow, that's diplomacy. So where it stands now is, it just was going to take too much money, and the neighbors weren't going to stand for, you know, trucks coming in the alley behind the end of the lot. The alley is a short alley anyway and narrow. There would have been so much construction would have had to happen because of the grade changes, and it would just, so we went back to the drawing board, thought about using one curb cut off Georgia Avenue. DDOT said no. So where we are now is DDOT will consider a entrance off of Girard Street. So it's in the civil engineer's hands now, and we are waiting to hear back from them. And you know, it's been postponed until July 26th. It may get postponed again.
I'm sorry, that date, does that date, because we just got that letter, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, asking for another postponement. Are you sure it's being postponed beyond that date, I believe?
It's beyond that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what they have on DCAS. I got that from there. Cynthia, okay. So
Yeah, Cynthia did just submit that, so I think that new date has not yet been.
Okay.
arranged.
Well, there you
July
go.
26th was the last date.
The
and
last time. So
it's
we've
being
extended it from
postponed
that.
again.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
Okay.
So-
Cynthia and I had asked her about that, and I said, oh, well, July 26th is what they have published. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, this is new. This was all new information, which made this meeting very helpful. So if I'm hearing what you're saying right now, the idea is to try to get an entrance on and off of the Girard Street side. And
Correct.
see how that plays. Patrick or Tony, who I know have done this before, any comment or thoughts on where the neighbors would stand on something like that, given where we are?
Correct. The
My,
neighbors.
my initial gut reaction is that I don't think there'll be that much. I mean, there's some logistics that'll have to work, and they'll have to figure out where they're going to do that. From a multitude of standpoints, it's probably the best option. It's a little absurd to me, and it just goes part and parcel with DDOT, how they work, that this issue would not even have been an issue had they not gone to ask BZA for an exemption. If they just had the ability to do it, it wouldn't have been an issue. Those curb cuts have been there for forever, for at least 30 plus years. I mean, they've been the entire time I've lived in my house, which is 30 plus years, they've been there. All of a sudden, it's an issue with DDOT. The side effect that is that if the exemption is approved, zoning has certain requirements that Howard has to meet. And that then causes problems for the exemption to be approved, because it abuts an alley that abuts a residence. So under the code, they'd have to put additional height of the rear wall. And if they have to use the alley, which we've already figured out doesn't work, there's not a turning radius there. It's going to take away half of the space that we had designed for the trash receptacles to be stored and the trucks to be able to get it and into park. Half of the parking spaces are going to go away, and it's just going to be a logis nightmare. If they move it to Girard, there is the ability, depending on how DDOT does it, that's on a grade from the street, Georgia Avenue side going down to the alley. So I'm sure there's a setback for the sidewalk and But if they made the curb cut close to the edge, that would eliminate all of these problems. Because then they would just be able to cut through a retaining wall that's probably 1.5 to 2 feet high at most, and grade it so that they could get into the lot. And it also, in my opinion, would make the accessibility almost the exact same as it would be on Georgia Avenue for ease of getting in and getting out. DDOT's just really being obstinate about this whole thing. And my gut tells me, I'm just going with my gut here, that if DDOT doesn't acquiesce to Gerard, Howard's just going to pull the whole thing and say, we're going to go somewhere else and use it for something else. Because they just can't achieve what they need to do, having the front closed off and using it out. It's just not going to work.
Any other committee
We
members?
had extensive discussions in 1B during that time when we had this and review. So I don't think the properties neighbors have the strong objections to that. So yeah, we reviewed that extensively. We had an extensive discussion in 1B and voted on this.
Correct. And that's why I, again, wanted to make sure that this committee was aware of what was happening, because the community was very involved in this. As Patrick said, kind of discussed the wall and the heights and where things were going to be and the trash, had the litany of concerns. But I've been around on these issues, and I know that once you get to this stage and DDOT is going back and forth, a lot of that stuff's going to go out the window, because DDOT wants what DDOT wants, and those community concerns can easily be forgotten before that BZA case gets heard. So if I understand the process, they would still probably come back and represent what they're going to do, but at that stage, it would likely be a done deal. So if there are strong community opinions on this, I think we need to make sure that they're kind of at the forefront. And it sounds like, Patrick, maybe you've had some of those conversations, but is there anything more you feel the ANC should be doing on this?
No, at this point, until we get an answer from DDOT and the university is able to understand what DDOT wants, I really truly believe that the only resolution is going to be if DDOT allows them to do the Gerard entrance, and or if they just acquiesce and say, we'll let them use one of the entrances off of Georgia Avenue. Other than that,
Yeah,
I
that's
just
not
don't-
gonna happen. That's not gonna happen.
Oh, I know that's not going to happen. I'm just throwing that out as an option.
So we're past that. Yeah, and that is the general consensus, between Cynthia and myself, and she's the expert, that the Gerard, this is the last hurrah. After this, we're all out of, and it does make sense. To your point, Patrick, it actually is a good and thoughtful, way to resolve it.
And it also it goes in tune to Michael's point about what the community wanted, because one of the things that we talked about in 1B and we wrote into the resolution that was sent to and I think 1E did the same thing, I can't remember, was that we were requiring that they do the wall as code requires on the alley, which will then eliminate the issues of noise and garbage and all the issues that the abutting neighbors were talking about. And we also had them talk to the university, and the university agreed to repair the crumbling wall that would be removed to put in the curb cut. So really, it's not going to be any more of a nuisance or inconvenience to the university per se, but it'll definitely still keep in line with what we had discussed with the community members and how to make this work in a way that the university and the community gets it. I would just also just footnote that one of the things that we did say on the Gerard Street side that the university agreed to was that when it repaired the wall, it was going to put up some kind of protective fencing along the Gerard Street side with some kind of mural-y kind of thing for beautification so that we wouldn't see all of the trucks in there, because that was a concern that came up. So we want to make sure that that happens still, and I don't see why it wouldn't. But I just think we need to be connected, as Michael said, to have the university, once they get a decision, whether they're going to get DDOT to approve the curb cut on Gerard, or they're just going to pull the whole thing in, and it's off the plate or off the agenda, whatever word you want to use.
All right. Teresa, any thoughts though, if you do pull the plug, you clearly need another location. Is there a second site in the works?
None that I'm privy to.
The reason this site was picked, Michael, just so you know, and I think you may have heard this already, is because there's a kitchen already in there. That used to be, back in the day, it was a Burger King originally, when I first moved into my house. And it was rented out to the Enterprise, but they never gutted the building. They never got anything out. And the location that the catering was using is the building that's now under construction across.
Right.
Herb
Herb one across from down on, right, that's where it's,
It was
yeah.
down across from the metro station down in Shaw. And we had to go through the same process back then when this was done, because the site originally was on campus. Then they had to expand because of the student count. They had to expand the kitchen and the dining room on campus. So that lost the space that they had there. And then they moved it into Herb One because that already had a professional kitchen. So we had to just make some minor adjustments to the zoning. But then when they decided to redevelop that site, that lost that. So this is the only site that I'm aware of that the university has at its disposal that has the functionality already there. But if the zoning piece and DDOT don't work, I don't see an answer that can fix them being able to use the site. They'll have to come up with something.
Okay, well, there's nothing on the table, and it doesn't sound like we need to necessarily put anything on the table. Teresa and Wendell, if you get any more information, obviously we are very interested in it. And if there's anything you want from us on it, let us know. But I'll just again remind for people who might be watching this later on, we have a resolution in support that's already on file, but that was based on the plans before. So, if we have to redo it, we have to redo it. Commissioner Footer, did you have anything more on this particular topic? No, you're good. All right, thank you both.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah, I hope
having
I
me.
made it painless. I wasn't.
Oh, it's painless. Thank you for having me, having us.
Thanks.
Good. I'll let you
Thank
know
you.
for sure.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Good night. All right, folks, that was everything I had on the agenda. Any final and passing comments? Very well then, I will go with unanimous consent to end the meeting. Any objections? Seeing none. Thank you all very much for your participation, and I think it's been good. Have a good night.
Night.
Thanks all.
Night, everyone.